The hangar was already alive with sound before the sun had fully climbed into the sky. Machines hummed, steel wheels rolled on concrete, and men and women in mechanic overalls moved with sure purpose. A row of jet engines sat on heavy stands, their curved blades glinting under bright overhead lights. Near one of those engines stood Mia, a slender 15-year-old girl with smudges of grease on her cheeks. Ooh. She wore a pair of protective goggles pushed up on her forehead and held a wrench, almost as big as her hand. Every so often, she wiped her palms on a clean rag and then reached back for a new tool. She had learned these movements from her father, who was one of the most respected mechanics in the company. His hands were broad and steady, hers were quick and eager. That morning, the CEO of the airline arrived without warning, stepped out of a sleek black sedan, his polished shoes clicking on the hangar floor. His tailored suit was a sharp contrast to the work clothes around him. He paused, surveying the scene. Dozens of mechanics fell silent, straightening their posture. The CEO's expression was a practiced blend of polite interest and quiet authority. He nodded at the lead foreman, who gave a crisp salute in return. Then the CEO's eyes fell on Mia. She was bent over a panel, studying it as if she could hear the engine's heartbeat. He let out a low chuckle that carried across the hangar. Mia heard him too. She straightened her back and tried to make herself small, but she could feel every eye turning toward her. Her hands froze on the wrench. The CEO stepped closer, his shoes clicking again. He looked her up and down. "What are you doing here, little girl?" he asked, voice light but edged with mockery. He shook his head and laughed a little more. "This is no place for a mechanic's daughter. You belong in an office, or maybe a school." The words stung, even though they were wrapped in a polite tone. Mia's face burned red, but she did not speak. She let the laughter roll over her, like wind shaking at dry leaves. Her father, who had been tightening bolts a few feet away, lowered his head. He felt a knot in his chest. He knew how hard Mia had worked to learn every part of engine repair. For years she had stayed late, watching him work after the other crews had gone home. She could recite torque values as easily as some kids could recite their multiplication tables. But she was young, and her father could not protect her from every sneer or mocking laugh. So he stayed silent and watched his daughter. Mia closed her eyes for a moment and took a steady breath. The sound of her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She reminded herself that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. Her father's station was only 2 out of 20 in the hangar, but he had taught her everything about engines. He had shown her how to spot a cracked vane, how to measure tolerances with a feeler gauge, even how to keep her tools in perfect order. She knew she could do this. She had watched skilled mechanics come and go, and she had learned more from their mistakes than they often knew. She had learned that respect was earned by action, not given by titles. Still, the CEO's laughter felt like a cold wind seeping under her skin. She set the wrench down carefully and picked up a small flashlight. She knelt beside the engine and ran her fingers along its smooth metal surface. Tiny scratches and worn spots told stories she could read. She traced the path of airflow through the fan, imagining it spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute. She whispered to herself, "I know this engine better than most." She had memorized its every curve and crevice in her dreams. The engine was not just a machine to her. It was a puzzle she loved solving. Around her, the mechanics shifted uneasily. Some exchanged glances, uncomfortable with the CEO's attitude. A few younger workers looked away, afraid to draw attention to themselves. But a couple of veteran mechanics folded their arms and watched Mia with interest. They had seen her dedication. They knew she was more than just a mechanic's daughter. One of them, a tall man with silver hair and a kindly face, gave Mia a small nod. It was a signal of solidarity. Mia met his eyes and felt a spark of courage. She lifted her head and gently pushed the engine panel back into place. She knew the panel had felt loose earlier, but the foreman had told her to leave it alone. She had fixed it anyway, quietly last night after the hangar had emptied. The CEO's laughter stopped. He watched her tuck the flashlight into her belt and pick up her wrench again. "I'll never understand why you're out here," he said, voice low now. "You have education opportunities we could provide. Why waste your time with nuts and bolts?" Mia wiped her forehead and met his gaze. Because, she said softly, I love it. These machines speak to me in ways I can't explain. Her words were calm, but each one carried weight. CEO frowned, unsure what to make of her. He was used to people flattering him or asking favors. He was not used to being challenged by a teenager covered in grease. Mia turned her back on him and went back to her work. She undid the bolts on a small inspection cover near the engine's core. She set each bolt aside on a magnetic tray in neat order. She peered inside, shining the flashlight on a ribbon of metal called a guide vane. She pointed to a tiny crack, less than a millimeter wide. This needs attention, she told no one in particular, her voice steady. The foreman rushed over, peering into the engine. Where did you see that? He asked, surprised. I might have missed it. The foreman was a man of few words, but his respect for Mia had just grown. He knelt beside her, tracing the crack with his finger and nodding. The CEO watched from a few feet away, his arms folded. He had never seen someone so young notice such a small flaw. He shifted uncomfortably. The hangar felt too small, too noisy, too bright. He looked at Mia's profile, focused and sure. She carefully removed the guide vane and placed it on a bench where he could get a better look. She ran her finger along the crack, then tapped it gently with a small hammer to listen for changes in tone. It was a method she had learned from her father. We need to replace this vane, she said. It could cause a blade imbalance at high speed. The foreman nodded again. She's right, he said. Find a replacement vane from the parts bin. We'll swap it out. Mia stood and gave a brief smile before walking toward the parts. Wreck. She grabbed a clean replacement vane, brought it back, and handed it to the foreman. He slid the old one out and slid the new one in. Mia helped him tighten the bolts to the correct torque. The whole time, she barely noticed the stares of the other mechanics or the wide eyes of the CEO. She was in her element. When they finished, she stood back and wiped her hands. The engine was ready for testing. Mia looked at the CEO, her eyes steady. She felt excitement building in her chest, but she also felt a quiet pride. She had done this. No mocking laugh could erase her skill or her love for engines. The CEO took a step forward, but he did not speak. He glanced around at the mechanics, who had gathered, some curious, some admiring. Then he turned on his heel and walked away. His steps echoed in the hangar as he disappeared into the office corridor. Mia watched him go, her shoulders relaxing. She picked up her flashlight and wrench again and went to inspect another part of the engine. The morning sun had climbed higher, but Mia felt a new light inside her heart. She would not let a single laugh shake her confidence. She knew this was only the beginning. The afternoon sun shone through the hangar's wide doors, casting long shadows over the polished concrete floor. Mia paused for a moment, breathing in the warm air and listening to the gentle hum of idle machinery. She had just finished tightening the last bolt on the engine's inspection panel when the radio crackled to life with urgent static. The voice of a flight dispatcher cut through the comm. Engine 2 on Flight 402 is showing high vibration levels. Jet needs to depart in 40 minutes. Maintenance. Please respond immediately. A hush fell across the hangar. Mechanics exchanged worried glances. Flight 402 was the company's longest domestic route, and its tight schedule left little room for delays. The senior mechanics sprinted toward a waiting jet that stood at the far end of the bay, left engine still cooling from a recent test. Their faces were serious as they gathered tools and climbed up to inspect. The foreman barked orders, and teams divided tasks without hesitation. Mia watched them go, heart pounding with excitement and anxiety. She knew this was a moment that would test every skill she had learned. She scrubbed her hands on her rag and slipped her goggles back down over her eyes. Her father stood beside her now, wiping his greasy palms on his own rag. You stay here, he said quietly, voice tense. This is serious. You'll only get in the way. Mia shook her head, her dark braids swinging. I can help, she said softly. Please let me help. Looked at her, torn between worry and pride. Before he could answer, the CEO swept in from the office doorway, phone in hand. His crisp suit looked out of place among oily overalls and scattered wrenches. He tapped his phone screen and frowned as he listened to the dispatcher. He raised, his voice sharp and impatient. Why is this taking so long? Get this fixed now, or we'll have to cancel the flight and face heavy fines. I want a full report on my desk in 10 minutes. One of the mechanics glanced toward Mia, then at her father. They all remembered how quickly she had spotted that tiny crack that morning. A low murmur rippled through the crew. Mia took a steady breath. She could see the senior mechanics peering into the engine cowling, testing wires and sensors. None had yet noticed what lay deeper inside. She set down her rag, crossed the bay in quick steps, and called over her shoulder, "Let me have a look." "Please." Head snapped toward her. The CEO turned, eyebrows raised. "You again?" he said. "There are professionals working this problem. You're still in school, young lady. Please return to your station." His words were cold and final. Mia felt a hot flush on her cheeks but did not shrink. She pushed her goggles up on her forehead and spoke to the foreman. "Sir, I know this jet. I've studied its sensors and its bearings. May I try my diagnostic tool on the vibration sensor array?" The foreman hesitated. He was a man who valued results over rank, he thought of the morning, when Mia had quietly replaced that worn guide vane and saved hours of downtime. He glanced at the CEO, then back at Mia. The CEO was staring at his phone, tapping as if he would not notice. Finally, the foreman said, "All right, but I'm watching. Do it right." Mia's heart leaped. She jogged back to her tool cart, grabbed her handheld scanner and a small probe, and hurried back to the engine. She knelt on the metal platform, clipped her scanner to the vibration sensor housing, and activated it. The display lit up with numbers dancing across the screen. She frowned, studying the waveform. It was irregular, spiking sharply every few seconds of a misaligned bearing deep inside the engine core. "Sir," she called to the foreman, pointing to the spikes. "These peaks mean the rear bearing is off by nearly a half millimeter. It's causing the rotor to wobble." The foreman stepped closer, peering at the scanner. "Are you sure?" he asked. "That reading should have shown on our bench tests." Mia shook her head. "The bench only tests under low load. Under real weight, the misalignment shows." She reached inside the sensor housing and carefully tapped a small metal cover. It popped open, revealing a tight cluster of wiring and a hidden port. She plugged in her probe and ran a fresh scan. The data confirmed her theory. The foreman's lips curved into a small, impressed smile. "Good catch," he said. The CEO finally looked up, noticing the growing circle of mechanics around Mia. He strode over, folding his arms. "What have you done now?" he asked, voice tight. The foreman turned to him. "Miss Harding here ran a dynamic test and found the rear bearing is misaligned. We need to remove the bearing casing and realign it before we splice it back." The CEO scowled. "That will take too much time. Just replace the whole assembly." "Pull a new one from inventory." Mia shook her head, her braid swinging again. "No, sir. The new assembly needs special calibration. Replacing it will add at least an hour. If we realign this one, we can be done in 20 minutes. The CEO's face reddened. He looked at his watch. Flight 402 left in 30 minutes. If Mia's plan worked, they could still make the flight. If not, they'd face cancellation. He glanced at the foreman, who shrugged. The mechanics were ready to act on Mia's suggestion. The CEO's chest heaved, his pride warred with common sense. At last he said, "Fine, but you do it your way. I'm watching, and if this fails," he did not finish. His words hung in the air like a challenge. Mia nodded and climbed down. Into the cramped space beside the engine core, she felt the metal walls press close around her. The hum of the engine parts sounded louder here, like a living creature breathing steel. She took off her goggles and wrapped them around her wrist. She unscrewed the bearing casing bolts in neat order, placing each on a magnetic pad she held in her lap. The mechanics above watched anxiously, some leaning over the railing to see her work. She reached inside and felt the bearing housing. It was warm from friction. She used a small alignment bar and tapped it gently with her hammer, coaxing the bearing back into perfect center. Each tap echoed like a heartbeat. She listened, closed her eyes, and felt the bearing seat itself. Then she slid the casing back over it and tightened the bolts to the exact torque value measured by the click of her calibrated wrench. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the radio. "Flight 400, 2 wheels up in 15 minutes. Mia's pulse quickened. Time was slipping. She stood and handed her tools to an assistant. The mechanics rushed to reinstall the inspection panel as she shut the sensor housing cover. The foreman motioned to fire up the engine for a test. Mia backed away, heart pounding, and pulled her goggles back into place. The engineer above turned. The ignition switch, the engine roared to life, vibrating loudly at first, then settling into a smooth, steady purr. The vibration readings on the control panel returned to normal. A cheer rose from the crew. The foreman slapped Mia's shoulder. "You did it," he said, voice thick with pride. The CEO had moved to the doorway, arms crossed, watching every moment. When the engine test passed, his jaw dropped. He looked at Mia, then at the foreman, and back again. The room felt suddenly too small, charged with energy and surprise. Mia, cheeks flushed with triumph, smiled and wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead. The CEO swallowed hard, words caught in his throat. Mia stepped down from the platform and replaced her goggles with a confident nod. The mechanics began rolling the jet out for departure. The foreman handed Mia a hot coffee in a paper cup. She sipped gratefully and looked around at the happy faces. Her father stepped forward and embraced her. "I'm so proud," he whispered. The CEO lingered behind the group, silent. Mia caught his eye and offered him a polite nod. For a moment, he seemed uncertain how to respond. Then he straightened his suit jacket and gave a curt nod back before turning away. Mia watched him go, but she did not feel anger or shame. She had proven her worth with skill and calm determination. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, but her confidence had grown stronger today. As the jet rolled out toward the runway, Mia gazed after it, excitement bubbling inside her. She thought of all the engines she would fix in the years to come, of every challenge she would face, and of how one laugh had sparked a moment that changed everything. Mia woke before dawn the next day, her body still humming with the thrill of what she had done. She dressed in her worn coveralls, took a quick bite of toast, and pinned her safety badge to her chest. The hangar loomed ahead in the pale light. Huge doors opened to the quiet morning. Inside, mechanics moved with sleepy steps, checking tools and wiping oil stains from their arms. A fresh jet engine sat on a stand under bright lamps, its metal fins gleaming like silver petals. This was Engine 3 from Flight 215, a new arrival that needed a test run before it could be approved for service. Mia carried her flashlight and diagnostic scanner to the engine stand. She had been asked by the foreman to run a full inspection because her work the day before had shown her talent. The foreman, Mr. Alvarez, greeted her with a nod. "Morning, Mia. Ready for another challenge?" He smiled as he spoke. "The engineers want your eyes on this one first." That small vote of confidence warmed her chest. She knelt beside the engine's side panel and ran her fingers along smooth metal. She traced the path of airflow inlet and followed wiring harnesses, listening for the slightest click or rattle. Most mechanics used only their tools and gauges, but Mia had learned to use her senses. She closed her eyes for a moment and imagined the engine running, its blades spinning thousands of times each minute. She thought of tiny imbalances and how they could ripple through the machine like a skipped heartbeat. Then she opened her eyes and shone her flashlight into a narrow seam, saw a faint smear of oil where none should be. Her heart quickened. An oil leak at that seam could cause parts to overheat under high load. She tapped a bolt above the seam with her small plastic hammer. A hollow sound told her the cover had not seated properly. She marked the spot with a small piece of colored tape she always carried. Mr. Alvarez leaned over her shoulder. "Good eye," he whispered. He pointed to the tape. "Let's tighten that cover and check the seal." Mia thumbed the cover bolts loose and then tightened them one by one to the exact torque value she had noted in her notebook. She replaced the old gasket with a fresh one from her pouch of spares. Mechanics gathered around, drawn by her calm competence. A tall, stoic man named Peter raised an eyebrow. "Where'd you learn all that?" he asked, half joking. Mia shrugged. My father taught me, and I practice a lot at home. Peter nodded, impressed. Others murmured their praise. Above them, the CEO's office window looked down on the hangar floor. Mia had not heard from him since the test flight. For Flight 402 had gone smoothly. He had remained silent, but she sensed he was watching. She finished her work on the engine cover and walked back to her tool cart. She grabbed her scanner again and ran a full systems check. Each reading came back green except the oil pressure gauge, which showed a slight dip. She frowned at the numbers. A tiny dip could mean a small blockage or a microfracture in a line. She clipped her scanner to the oil feed line and watched the live graph. The pressure flickered just below the safe limit whenever she tapped the fitting near the engine's base. Mia took a deep breath. This was more complex than a loose cover. She gathered a small inspection mirror and knelt beside the line. She angled the mirror to see underneath the pipe. There, hidden by the engine's structure, was a faint scratch across the metallic hairline crack in the oil feed pipe. She put down the mirror and knelt, carefully feeling the pipe with her gloved fingers. The crack was so small that without light and angle, no one would spot it. Yet if left unaddressed, it could become a leak under stress. She stood and pointed. To the crack? We need to replace this oil feed pipe, she told Mr. Alvarez. He examined the spot. You're right. Good catch, Mia. He clapped his hands for two assistants. Get a replacement from Storage Bay C. As they fetched parts, the hangar doors rumbled as a delivery truck backed inside. A line of crates rolled off, loaded with new engine components. The buzz of activity rose again. Mia watched the new pipe arrive. She took it, inspected it for defects, and handed it to a mechanic who slipped it into place. Then she joined him. To tighten clamps and reconnect sensors, her hands moved with practiced ease. Every bolt clicked at its precise torque. Every sensor connector snapped firmly. Once the pipe was in place, she ran another pressure check. The gauge climbed back to a steady green zone. She smiled and gave a thumbs up. The mechanics around her broke into applause. Mr. Alvarez ruffled her hair. Tomorrow, you should lead the full test run, he said. Mia's chest swelled with pride. She turned to see the CEO at the edge of the group, arms folded, expression unreadable. Their eyes met for a moment. Mia nodded respectfully. He gave a curt nod in return before slipping away toward his office. As the test run began, engineers shut the hangar doors and flipped switches from the control booth. Mia and Mr. Alvarez stood behind the safety barrier, watching the engine spin up. It growled to life, rising through idle to moderate speed. The oil pressure held steady. The vibrations remained low. The whole machine hummed smoothly. When the run ended, the control booth lit up with approval signals. Mechanics cheered again, and Mia felt the echo of her own triumph. She walked around the barrier to collect her tools. Her father stepped out of the crowd and hugged her tight. You're going to be famous around here, he whispered. Mia laughed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, she said. Later that afternoon, the hangar was quieter. A small group of executives, led by the CEO, approached the engine stand. He gestured toward Mia, who was cleaning her tools at the cart. The group stopped. The CEO cleared his throat. I understand Miss Harding led the inspection and repair. Today, he said, voice steady. Her attention to detail saved us time and potential danger. The executives murmured amongst themselves. Mia looked at the floor, cheeks warm. She had never spoken in front of senior leadership. Mr. Alvarez stepped forward. Yes, sir. She noticed an oil feed crack that none of us would have seen. I recommend we give her formal recognition. The CEO studied Mia's face. She held his gaze without flinching. He nodded slowly. Very well. I will arrange for a letter of commendation, perhaps a spot in our internship program this summer. Paused, then added, but I expect you to keep proving yourself. Mia swallowed hard. She managed a small nod. Thank you, sir. I will. The CEO turned and walked away without another word. The executives followed, leaving Mia and Mr. Alvarez alone beside the engine. He slapped her on the back. Well done, kid. Mia grinned. Thanks. She looked up at the engine. It seemed to glow in the late afternoon light. She thought of all the secrets hidden in its metal heart and how many more she wanted to uncover. When she looked back, her father was waiting. With a notebook in hand, "Let's log everything you did today," he said. They sat on a low workbench and wrote down each step, finding the oil leak smear, tightening the cover, spotting the hairline crack, replacing the pipe, running the pressure test. They marked tool settings, part numbers, and times. Mia liked having every detail in her book. It reminded her of the work she had done and the knowledge she had earned. As they finished, the hangar lights clicked on for the evening. The daily shift ended and mechanics cleaned up their stations. Mia packed her tools into her worn toolbox and slung it over her shoulder. She stopped by the office door, where she saw the CEO's closed nameplate. She pressed her hand against the cool glass. A moment of thanks and farewell to someone who had helped her grow, even if he had not known it. Then she turned and walked out, her toolbox heavy but her heart light. Outside, the sky was streaked with orange and purple. The parking lot was filling with cars as workers headed home. Mia climbed into her old hatchback and waved to her father, who was loading his toolbox into his truck. She started the engine and felt the familiar purr beneath her. As she drove away, she thought about tomorrow's challenges. There would be more engines, more tests, more chances to learn, and she knew she would meet them all with skill and calm determination. No matter what title people held, she would show that real talent came from hard work and a love for the machines beneath her hands. The morning light filtered through the hangar windows as Mia arrived before sunrise. She carried her toolbox, its worn handle fitting easily in her hand. Today was her first official day as an apprentice in the company's new mentoring program. The hangar smelled of fresh oil and metal polish. Mechanics were already gathering for their shift, greeting one another with nods and smiles. Mia felt a flutter of nerves mixed with excitement. She placed her toolbox under her station and smoothed down her uniform. Her father appeared beside her, carrying his own tools. He gave her a proud grin. "Ready for day one, kid?" he asked quietly. Mia nodded, her braids swinging. "I am. I want to make every moment count." He ruffled her hair and walked away to his own work. Mia watched. Himgol then glanced at the office doorway. She held her breath as the CEO stepped out. Holding a stack of freshly printed schedules and a small stack of certification forms. "Mia," he called, voice steady and kind. "Good morning." His tone lacked the impatience of earlier days. Mia approached, toolbox clutched at her side. "Good morning, sir," she replied. He handed her a neatly printed certificate. "This is your official apprenticeship letter. Outlines your training plan for the next 6 months. You will work closely with Mr. Alvarez and 2 senior mechanics on all critical maintenance tasks." He paused, studying her face. "I want you to learn every aspect of engine repair and diagnostics. I want regular reports on your progress." Mia took the letter with both hands, eyes shining. "Thank you, sir. Won't let you down." The CEO nodded and gave a small smile. "I'm counting on it. Let's meet in my office at 8:30 to review your schedule." He walked back inside. Mia watched him go, her heart thumping. She looked around at the busy hangar wrenches clicking, engines humming, and felt a deep sense of belonging. At 8:30, Mia entered the CEO's office. He pointed to a chair beside his desk. "Sit, please," he said. On his desk lay a detailed calendar, project outlines, and her apprenticeship logbook. "Here's your first week," he began. "On Monday and Tuesday, you'll shadow Mr. Alvarez on routine inspections. On Wednesday, you'll assist Peter with turbine alignment procedures. On Thursday, you'll join the diagnostics team for sensor calibration. And on Friday, you'll run a full systems check under supervision." Mia nodded, scribbling notes. He handed her a pen. "Shh. Use this logbook to record everything. Your tasks, the tools you used, the values you measured, and any challenges you faced. At the end of each week, bring it here. I want to see how you grow." Paused, then added, "And Maya, if you ever need guidance or have ideas to improve our process, my door is open." Mia closed her notebook carefully. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate your support." She stood and shook his hand before leaving. Each word felt like a promise she must keep. Back on the hangar floor, Mia found Mr. Alvarez waiting by an engine stand. He smiled broadly. "Welcome officially, apprentice," he said, tapping her logbook. "Let's get started." Throughout the morning, Mia watched every move he made. She noted how he inspected bolts for wear, how he measured clearances with a feeler gauge, and how he double-checked his torque values on each nut. She wrote down every step in her logbook in neat handwriting. At midday, he let her handle the micrometer to measure blade thickness under his watchful eye. In the afternoon, she joined Peter, the tall mechanic from earlier weeks, to work on a turbine alignment. Peter explained how slight shifts in alignment could cause vibration and reduce engine life. He guided Mia's hands as she adjusted the rotor until the dial indicator read 0. Mia's hands were steady, and the alignment was perfect on her first try. Peter let out a low whistle. "Well, done," he said. Mia couldn't help smiling. The next day, in the diagnostics bay, Mia teamed up with 2 senior engineers. They calibrated vibration sensors and pressure transducers. Mia learned how to connect each sensor to the control unit, how to run calibration software, and how to interpret the output graphs. When a sensor read slightly off, she spotted a loose connector pin and reseated it. The engineers exchanged impressed looks. Mia felt a surge of confidence. Thursday's sensor calibration led directly into Friday's full systems check. Under supervision, Mia ran the engine up through idle, mid-range, and high-speed tests. She monitored oil pressure, coolant temperature, fuel flow, and vibration levels. Each gauge stayed within safe limits. During downtime, she recorded every parameter in her logbook. When the test finished, the control booth signaled success, and the crew cheered quietly. Mia exhaled, feeling the weight of the day lift from her shoulders. That evening, Mia returned to the CEO's office with her logbook. She handed it to him and took a seat. He flipped through the pages, reading her detailed notes. "It's very thorough," he said after a moment. "You've learned a great deal in just 1 week." He pointed to a checklist in her book. "You documented each procedure, recorded all values, and noted the slight sensor error. That level of detail is rare." Felt a warm glow of pride. He closed the book and met her eyes. "I'd like to give you a small gift." He opened his drawer and pulled out a brand new diagnostic scanner advanced model the company had recently acquired. Mia's breath caught. "This will help you perform dynamic tests more accurately," he said, handing it to her. "I expect great things." Mia held the scanner carefully. Its sleek design fit perfectly in her hand. She turned it on, testing its display. "Thank you, sir. I will put it to good use." That weekend, Mia visited home with her father. She placed the new scanner on her desk and showed her mother how it worked. Her parents beamed with pride. Her mother cooked her favorite meal, and they sat around the kitchen table talking about Mia's week. Mia described each project, each challenge, and each victory. Her father nodded and raised a toast to Mia's bright future. "Act!" They clinked glasses of lemonade. On Monday morning, Mia returned to the hangar. She felt a deeper sense of purpose. With her new scanner in her toolbox, she was ready for the next challenges. She thought of the CEO's words, his open door, his trust in her ideas. She planned to suggest a small improvement to the coolant filter design. Based on what she learned during the board tour incident, she jotted down the idea in her notebook. As she walked past the engine stands, senior mechanics gave her respectful nods. Apprenticeship had changed how they saw her. No one laughed anymore. Only a few weeks ago, the CEO's mocking chuckle had stung her. Now, that moment felt like a distant memory. She had turned doubt into opportunity through hard work and calm determination at her station. Mia set down her toolbox, opened her logbook, and wrote today's date at the top of a new page. She sketched the layout of a new filter housing, noting how a larger mesh could trap debris more effectively. She noted possible materials and asked the engineers to review her idea. The hangar doors opened, letting in fresh air. Mia took a deep breath, feeling the promise of a new day. She lifted her head and adjusted her goggles. Engines hummed around her like eager teachers. She picked up her wrench and walked toward Engine Bay 5, ready for whatever came next. In that moment, Mia knew she had found her place. She was no longer just the mechanic's daughter or the CEO's surprised apprentice. She was a true engineer in the making, proving with every bolt and every test that talent and passion could conquer any doubt. Mia smiled, confident that her best stories were still unfolding. The sun rose pale and cool over the hangar as Mia unlocked the big sliding doors. Today was special. The company's board of directors was coming for a full tour. The CEO had personally asked to show them how the maintenance team kept the fleet flying safely and on time. Mechanics hurried through their morning checks, wiping sweat and oil from their arms. Mia felt a mix of pride and nerves. She knew the board expected a flawless display. By mid-morning, a convoy of black SUVs rolled in. The board members stepped, out smartly dressed, carrying briefcases, and followed the CEO onto the hangar floor. Mia stood beside her father at Engine Bay 3. She wore a clean uniform and held her notebook. The CEO stopped before a shining engine on its test stand and began his speech. "Our team here is the finest in the industry. They handle every challenge with skill and speed." He gestured to Mia's father. "And this is Mr. Harding, one of our senior mechanics." The board applauded politely. Then the CEO turned to Mia. "And this young woman, Mia Harding, is an exceptional talent. She's already earned my respect." A few board members smiled. Mia blinked and offered a small nod. Inside, her heart fluttered. She watched as they continued their tour, inspecting tool rooms and control booths. She trailed behind them, ready to answer any question. Suddenly, an urgent alarm sounded. The test stand lights flashed red, and a shrill buzzer cut through the CEO's presentation. One of the engineers dashed in, face pale. "The test readings on Engine 4 are off the charts. Temperature rising too fast. It could seize if we don't shut it down." Mechanics around Engine 4 froze. The board members murmured in worry. The CEO's confident smile vanished. He turned to his chief engineer. "What's happening?" The engineer shook his head. "We ran a standard heat-soak test at idle. Coolant flow should be stable. But the temperature spiked 20 degrees in seconds." He pointed to the control panel where gauges flickered. "We need to shut it down or risk damage." Mia stepped forward before anyone could stop her. "May I?" she asked, voice calm. The engineer glanced at her, then at the CEO. The CEO hesitated, but the urgency left no time. "Go ahead," he said tersely. Mia sprinted to the tool cart. She grabbed her compact thermal camera and a set of flow meter probes. Mechanics cleared a path as she reached the platform beside the engine. She clipped the thermal camera to her belt and scanned over the engine casing. On the built-in screen, a hot spot glowed bright orange near one of the coolant lines. She knelt and placed a probe on the inlet fitting. The flow reading was low, far below safe levels. She looked up to the engineer. "Aile's coolant inlet flow is dropping. There's a partial blockage in the supply manifold." She tapped her notebook. "We need to isolate that segment and flush it, then check the filter screen." The engineer frowned. "That will take at least 10 minutes, and the board is..." Here he sounded torn. Mia met his eye. "If we don't clear it, the engine will overheat and could seize. We'll lose hours of work and risk a costly replacement." The CEO's jaw clenched as he watched the board members glance between the alarms and Mia's calm face. She turned back to the inlet manifold. A small mesh filter sat under a quick-release cover. Mia used her wrench to loosen the cover bolts in neat order, then lifted it free. A thin layer of debris, metal shavings, and oil residue clogged the mesh. She tapped it with her small plastic hammer to dislodge the blockage. The debris fell onto a clean tray she held. She winked at a nearby apprentice who scooped up the tray. Mia rinsed the mesh with a quick spray from her portable coolant canister, then dried and reinserted it. She replaced the cover and tightened the bolts to spec, listening for the wrench's click. She handed the dirty filter to the apprentice. "Send this to analysis," she said. "We need to know why it caught debris." The apprentice dashed off. Mia climbed back down and signaled the engineer to resume the test. The engineer hit the start button. The engine idled again. The temperature gauge steadied and began to drop. Within seconds, it returned to normal operating range. The alarm silenced, and the red lights went out. A collective sigh of relief filled the hangar. The CEO turned to the board. Dow, as you can see, he began, regaining his composure. Our team can handle any problem, big or small, without skipping a beat. He nodded at Mia. Miss Harding identified and fixed the issue in under 2 minutes. The board members erupted in applause. Mia felt her cheeks warm. She glanced at her father, who gave her a proud thumbs up. One board member, a stern woman in a navy suit, stepped forward. Miss Harding, she said, would you explain briefly what you did? Our stakeholders will want to know. Mia swallowed and took the microphone the board's assistant handed her. She spoke clearly and slowly. The coolant flow dropped because debris blocked the inlet filter. I removed the cover, cleaned and flushed the filter, then reinstalled it. That restored full flow and kept the engine cool. She paused. We will analyze the debris to find its source and prevent future blockages. The board members nodded. The stern woman smiled. Excellent work. The applause resumed, louder this time. Mia stepped back to let the tour continue. She followed. In the group, her heart pounding. She had never spoken before such a crowd, especially to board members. After the tour ended, the CEO gathered everyone in the briefing room. The board offered praise and asked questions about maintenance plans. Mia stood quietly at the back, notebook in hand. The CEO addressed the group. Thanks to Mia's quick action, we avoided a major delay. I think she deserves a special recognition. He pressed a button on the conference speaker, and a framed certificate slid out of a hidden compartment. In the wall, Mia gasped as he held it aloft. Outstanding Maintenance Achievement Award. He handed the certificate to her with both hands. Congratulations, Mia. She accepted it, breathless, and turned it around in her hands. The board members gave her a standing ovation. Mia's father stepped forward and hugged her.
And the room
Buzzed with admiration. Later, as the sun dipped low, mechanics cleaned up and locked tools away. Mia sat on a toolbox and read her certificate. It glowed under the hangar lights. She thought of how far she had come from being laughed at to earning the CEO's respect and a board's applause. She closed her notebook and zipped it shut. The CEO approached her quietly. Well done today, he said softly. Kept us on schedule and saved us money. He studied her for a moment. I underestimated you. That will not happen again. Mia smiled warmly. Thank you, sir. I just did what I learned to do. He returned her smile, an actual smile, and nodded. Then he walked away into the office corridor. Mia stood and stretched, feeling the weight of the day's work in her arms and legs. She held the certificate against her heart. Outside, the sky glowed pink and gold. Tomorrow would bring new engines, new tests, and new chances to learn. But today, she had shown everyone, especially herself, that skill and calm under pressure could silence any doubt. And for the first time, she truly believed it.